So let me say that quality analyst and caption specialist. I don't even want to be calling myself this though. I don't even want to claim it, but
Why not?
because it's AI, like I don't want to feel like I feel like when I add specialist to it, it feels like I'm inviting it, I'm promoting it. Do you kind of get what I'm saying?
No.
Okay. It feels like I'm wanting to do the job. Like I'm proud of this role when in actuality I feel like I'm just doing it and I'm not necessarily proud of it. Because I wouldn't say I'm anti AI, but I'm like suspicious AI person.
That was Ava. We're not using her real name at her request. She's a freelance videographer and photographer in California, working as a contractor training AI. Like the overwhelming majority of these workers, she doesn't actually know who she's working for. She gets assignments through a large employment firm which connects her and tens of thousands of people to short-term jobs. Despite years of professional experience and a master's degree, she wasn't getting hired on the traditional job market. So when she was presented with a well-paying opportunity using her skills and expertise, she took it, even though it meant training bots to potentially replace her. Ava is one of many millions of people around the world who are turning to gig work in tech, alongside an estimated 1 in 5 workers who are using AI in some way during their workday. And not only desk jobs, but in the trades too. Headlines warn of AI taking your job. But is that really the issue? With its accelerated growth, what is the future of work? And what does this actually mean for the working class? Welcome to Shifting Terrain. I'm Rachel Rybacek, a working class sociologist who spent a long time thinking about class and race. I'm having conversations with experts and everyday people to amplify the cultural and political issues both capturing and dividing America's working class today. Later in the episode, I'll talk with a journalist and a professor, two people who've been writing about technology and work for years. They'll share insights that go deeper than AI is coming for your job, so we understand what's happening beyond the hype cycle. We'll also hear from a renowned economist who has a very clear vision of how AI could benefit the working class. But let's get back to Ava's job at the company that we're not naming for the purpose of anonymity. The majority of her work is writing captions for videos in painstaking detail to describe the color of the cup the man is holding, the texture of the wallpaper, where the woman's hairband has fallen, along with every other single thing happening in the scene, something that a computer can't do on its own. She is one of thousands of people working on similar clips. By using word descriptions, they're training the bot to make video on its own, to recognize how to create continuity in the images and how to make those decisions. How did you get into this work?
So I was looking for a job, really. I was working in freelance, and with freelance, it's just, as they say, it's feast and there's famine. And I got tired in my famine season of looking for work, trying to pitch myself. And I just thought, I really just want something consistent, that I know that every 2 weeks or every week that I'm just going to get a paycheck and that's it. And this woman posted it's a woman Facebook group of media makers. And she posted a link and was like, hey, if anybody is interested in this like AI video job, we get paid every week and it's not too bad. And so I applied and I did this really dystopic AI interview where there's like literally nobody there. They're asking you questions and
Wait, what do you mean there's nobody there?
there's nobody there on like it's a basically AI interview that's like you press it and I forgot what this AI person's name. I think it was like Sue or something.
So
So
it's a bot. It's not a human.
exactly. It's a bot interviewing you. And then I got approved and I got hired on and I've been working with the company for I would say since August.
After your interview with Sue the bot,
Mhm.
what happened next? Did you have a training with real humans in real time?
No. So once that was done, we got an email saying that you're hired and we do an onboarding. We put in our W-9 because we're all contractors. And then they sent us an email saying you're being added to this Slack group. And then that's when we interact with real humans and we see what's going on inside and we learn about the project and so forth. You can work up to, I believe, like 80 hours a week. Most projects start and stop pretty often. You have 80 hours available, but you don't really have the opportunity to work that. And depending on the project and its difficulty, sometimes, you don't even get up to 40, even though it's available, because the time that's allotted for the task and the time that you can charge for that task, sometimes it's not equal. You can say, this task is supposed to take 25 minutes, but you're doing it, and in actuality, it's taking 35 to 40 minutes, but you can only charge for 25 minutes. And a lot of times we as workers have to kind of advocate for ourselves collectively and say, no, this is really taking about 45 minutes. And we really, really would appreciate if we get paid for this.
So basically, the wage goes down every single minute you're spending over the amount they said it should take.
Yeah. And then we get told like the client is only willing to pay this amount for this task. So sometimes it's either you just chuck it up and you either try to rush and you do your best. But the thing is, if you rush, you fail, and if you fail, you can't really stay on the project.
Did you try applying for other kinds of jobs?
Yeah, and it was so difficult. It's kind of disheartening. I have experience, I have a master's degree from what people would say is one of the prestigious schools in the, country. And it's so difficult to find a job. And I've even tried to find a job that, I would say I'm overqualified for, and I still couldn't get it. And so when I found this and I got a bit of consistency, it was a good feeling, but it's also like, yeah, but it's AI. And even before I got into this, I was extremely anti-AI. And then I'm like, these bills are not going to pay itself. So I have to suck it up and work.
Is your employment week to week?
Yeah, you get paid weekly, but also too, like projects can stop at any moment. So even today, I got a notification that one of the projects that I was on was paused. And that's another thing, you can't even plan ahead because a lot of these projects get paused because everything is based on the client, whether the client likes the work. So you work for 2 weeks and the client doesn't like the work, and you're halted, but you were told that you have 4 weeks of work.
You wanted consistency, and this seemed like an opportunity to have that, but it's not consistent.
The problem is that when it's promoted to get people in it, it's very clear and consistent. It says 2 to 4 weeks, but in the actual contract, it says something may happen where the project can be halted or things can change, but then it happens so often and you're like, wow, I can't really plan around it. It's just not the greatest position to be in, honestly. There was a woman I remember, this broke my heart on one of the first projects that I work on, and she said, I'm specifically doing this job because I need to pay the insurance for me and my family. There's another girl who was saying like, "I'm so happy I got this because I need to pay for my rent next month." Like there's so many people who are so open on these Slack channels that are just sharing where they are at or they just got laid off. So I think the sad part is that a lot of times these companies prey on people's desperation, and I think that's the heartbreaking thing.
Well, what about for yourself?
I say fingers crossed and prayers up all the time. Because that's really how my life has been going. I don't really come from parents who have money. I don't have family who just have it like that. And so a lot of times it's just me and my faith that really keeps me going.
How does working for this company compare to other jobs you've had in terms of how it's organized, the satisfaction of your work?
As far as organization, I would say this company is not as organized as my other jobs at all. I actually laugh at the idea that people think that AI is going to take over because I'm thinking these bots switch up on you. Like, you never know when they're going to do their job. Even within our Slack channel, sometimes we have bots to help us answer questions. And this is not funny, but one time they installed this bot to help us answer questions, and the bot was giving everybody all the wrong answers. So then when they put it on the task, all the tasks were failing because the answers were wrong. So things like this happen, all the time.
You had mentioned to me that you're teaching AI things that it will be able to do and then replace you. So you're training AI to replace you.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's so many times, like even when I'm working, I'll be typing and then I'll stop and I'm like, I just have this sinking feeling in my stomach that's like, wow, I'm really training this thing to erase me, but then my heart jumps back up. But it doesn't have to, right? Like maybe you can create something that cannot be replicated, that AI can't compete with, and that can be lucrative for yourself. But I just have to change my perspective anytime I get that feeling because you have to pay your bills and you also are looking to use it in a positive way. And so that kind of keeps me going, you know?
I left my conversation with Ava with more questions about the bots, secret clients who turn things on and off, and the surveillance of the company owned Slack channel, the only way to have conversations with your remote coworkers. I wondered how common Ava's experience was. Our next guest, Dzieza, is a feature writer at The Verge. He covers technology, science, business, and their human impacts. He's researched and written multiple in-depth articles about the intersection of AI and work, including the hidden labor behind artificial intelligence. What are the questions you're sitting with or being challenged by, knowing what you know, being as familiar as you are with this technology?
It's a really interesting time where no one really knows what's happening. I think the degree to which the people building these things don't fully understand the trajectory along which they'll develop, and then they certainly don't know, because no one knows, the social and economic impacts of the technology. I think there's a lot of questions about how this is going to affect work and workers, and whether it will result in automation driven job loss or more sort of automation of particular tasks and reconfigurations of production pipelines, and how the power dynamics changed in that scenario. I mean, I think you're seeing it with software engineers is the most obvious one right now. Language models have proven to be really good at coding, and that is changing the way a lot of software engineers work. They're able to work faster. There is debate over how that has affected demand for software engineers and entry level software engineers, when a lot of the stuff entry level workers were doing can now be done by AI. At the same time, there's evidence that you need to be fairly experienced and knowledgeable to use these tools well, and that if you don't have that experience, you end up writing a lot of bad code that takes a lot of work to fix. When you have a lot of demand for people with 10 years of experience and no demand for people with 1 year of experience, how do you get the people with 10 years of experience if there's no jobs for 1 year, people with 1 year experience? What that does to how people learn on the job and how education systems adjust for that. Nothing has been quite as effective as software engineering in any other field, but I think there are other fields where you'll start to see you don't need so many first year law graduates. You don't need so many kind of entry level consultants, but you still need the highest level.
It's going to be easy to hire people without much expertise and give them these AI tools in order to compensate for their lack of expertise or skill.
Yeah.
And so it's really that those middle people are going to then be looking for jobs at entry level positions, but they'll be overqualified
Hmm.
because they're doing better than the new entry level people augmented by AI.
I think that's right. And I think the very highest level there will still be demand for, because you need them to be able to improve the AI. Not just the machine learning engineers, but you need people who will be able to stump the model and then design training data to improve it and patch those holes. And so those people will be quite valuable. And then you'll have a lot across the rest of the field, kind of a de-skilling, where anyone with a few years experience can do a pretty good job here. I don't know how that will play out, but I think it'll be very disruptive, because you have the potential, depending on how things go, that a lot of these fields where you used to be able to climb a career ladder are stuck at a homogenous gig level of like, we need some coders to do some programming. We're going to get some. They can be anybody. They don't need institutional experience with our specific platforms or whatever. And then they'll go back looking for work.
What about a therapist? Or
Hmm.
there's this whole other kind of sector of people that get paid for their advice.
You're already seeing people turn to it for therapy like uses. It's risky because we know these models have a tendency toward sycophancy and telling you kind of what you want to hear. On the other hand, like, I know they have been trained on standard therapeutic practice and they can give pretty good advice a lot of the time. If the better than nothing version is astronomically cheaper than the real thing, then the real thing tends to not do very well in the market.
Right.
It becomes a luxury good and everyone has to settle for the okay thing. I think there's lots of things where you want like a real human connection, but would settle for the thing that's in your pocket and available and generally tells you what you want to hear.
I spoke with someone who works for a large company training AI, and this is a place that you've put a lot of attention and done great reporting on the worker side of AI. What are you hearing from workers? What is the current state of that industry?
Industry is booming right now. I think there's a lot of demand for high quality data from the AI labs. How that is trickling down to workers is pretty varied. How people like it depends a lot on their own personal situation. The people who are happier with it have either full-time jobs or maybe they're grad students or they're not relying fully on this job. And that has to do with the cadence of AI development, but it makes for a stressful job because you have to be both always on call and ready to drop everything and work a bunch and also prepared to just not work for weeks.
Do people work for multiples of them and piece together this gig work
Yeah,
across platforms?
definitely the people who are trying to make a go of it as a real job or a real career all work for multiple platforms and they see who has work going on any particular day. Maybe a project will last for a week on one platform and then be put on pause without warning and then they'll hop to the other one. I think that's just a necessity. I mean, all the labs are using multiple companies to produce data and all the workers are working on multiple companies to piece together a living.
There was a recent news story about Mercor firing, though firing suggests that people are employees. The majority of the people who work for them are independent contractors. And the project they were working on was eliminated. But then Mercor reposted jobs doing the same tasks for $5 an hour less.
That story was interesting because of the attention it got. It felt like the sort of thing that has been kind of par for the course in this industry for years. But I think because Mercor is drawing from a different kind of class sector, sort of more English speaking, more in the US, higher education, who maybe hasn't had experience with that sort of abrupt jerking around of gig work, it will be interesting to see what happens because these platforms have incredible ability to kind of turn human labor on and off like a tap. That's sort of the ideal, is that a lab is like, we need 100 chemists tomorrow and we need them to do this work. And then they can ping people in their network or put out a call and people will come do the work. The lab then says, actually, we need the data to be slightly different. The platform can then send out new instructions that everybody has to follow or they get booted. Maybe it takes longer. Now, like the rate is out of alignment with the contract they made with the lab, so they cut pay by a little bit. They're always sort of adjusting the dials, and those dials happen to be how much people get paid, how many people work on a project, all of these things that really are life and death for people who are depending on this work, but are always being modulated depending on whatever the negotiations are between the vendor and the customer.
And the workers who are actually assigned the tasks, completing the tasks, have no say in what's happening.
Not only do they have no say in what's happening, they don't know what's happening. Like, they don't know whose AI they're training most of the time. It's usually anonymized through code names, and the vendors just talk about the client. You know, the client wants this, the client says this now. So the workers have no real visibility into kind of the pipeline that they're part of. These things just happen, which I think is part of the reason people react so strongly to it. It's like, I thought I had this job and now it's paying half as much, no explanation.
These companies are atomizing work into such discrete tasks, and people basically log into this platform and you take the task and you work on it and you get paid or you don't based on whether or not you complete it to the satisfaction of the bot or someone. And it immediately creates a certain level of scarcity.
The scarcity dynamic is really intense. That is a lot of the pressure because there's not always work available. When there is, workers feel pressure to work 12 hours a day or whatever until it's gone. They're always competing with each other. There's an incentive for the platforms to have a lot of people so that work is scarce and you can pick the best people and have people always on call when they're needed. So it's in their interest to have a surplus of people.
In terms of the class component, I'm thinking about unpredictable work schedules for service workers, retail workers, busy times of season, whether in the summer because of tourism in certain places or the holidays, shops need more workers. And so that kind of practice has also been happening outside of the AI context for quite a long time also. So
Mm-hmm.
is this the future of work? Is this basically gigification of jobs as much as possible, whether it's AI or not?
There's definitely an interest among businesses in only paying for the work you need when you need it. And that's how you get that kind of algorithmic scheduling to maximize the efficiency of your workforce. And it just invariably creates pressure on workers because it means that you have places that are perpetually understaffed. No one is sitting around like folding t-shirts or chatting. They're always slammed. And I think you could do a similar thing with this sort of work, depending on how these tools are adopted, depending on regulation and organizing. I think the free market would arrive at something where you're only calling people in when you need them and not for a second longer than you need them.
Are there ways you're seeing people subverting this model that has potential for worker power, worker organizing?
There have been some attempts to organize. None of them have been super successful yet. I mean, it's an incredibly difficult challenge. There's no common space a lot of the time. There's no sort of break room, obviously. They can't even directly message each other often. They're on these surveilled platforms like Slack. There's not a lot of free space in which you could organize, and the job market is bad and plenty of people need money. There's a lot of difficulty there. I know that there's various sort of data worker organizations that have tried to organize, usually around lobbying for regulation of some sort around kind of minimum working standards and things like that. Maybe people have a right to know at least how long they're going to be working for or are guaranteed some number of hours. That seems maybe more viable to me than some sort of unionizing. I mean, everyone's an independent contractor all over the world, basically. It's very difficult to kind of organize that workforce, but maybe some sort of regulation around minimum working standards.
And so, what do you think this might mean for the future of the working class?
Since I started writing about this human data industry a couple years ago, at the time it was just a totally weird thing that no one knew about. It's starting to become a recognizable category of work. I don't think the general public is aware of it really yet, but I think if things continue on this trajectory, they will be. So to know about data workers or like know someone who does this work, and I think then maybe you'll start to see more attention towards it. And this gets it sort of wanting to see what the near future of AI progress looks like. I think if there's a recognition that this is permanent or a semi-permanent category of work and not just a thing that you need to get the models to be autonomous, people will start to be more interested in it and concerned about it and thinking about what might it look like to make this job a sustainable job that you can live on. I think there's definitely a possible future where this goes to a pretty dark place for workers, pretty precarious place for workers. I think there's at least potential to de-skill and devalue a lot of what used to be white collar middle class work. How that will play out, I don't know, but it does feel like this sort of transition that you see at these big moments of industrialization where you have an artisanal holistic process that's broken down into a bunch of different components and partially automated and partially not. And generally that has been pretty hard for workers unless they find a way of wresting some of that power back.
What are the options for workers getting power back in an unpredictable labor market? And when the nature of work itself seems to be changing in unprecedented ways? This is where Aaron Benanov comes in. He's an assistant professor in the Department of Global Development at Cornell University. He's the author of the 2020 book Automation and the Future of Work, as well as a recent essay titled, Is the AI Bubble About to Burst? You wrote a book that came out in 2020 titled Automation and the Future of Work. What has tracked with your position in that book, and what's different from what you predicted or imagined?
I would say that we still don't live in a world where robots are doing all of our jobs. There's still a lot of people working. There's a big need for human labor. I think that when the book came out, it was really the pandemic crisis time. At that time, I think it became really clear to people how far off the robot discourse was, because what happened during the pandemic, we just needed all of these frontline workers, all of these nurses, warehouse workers, grocery store shelf stockers. And for a moment, there was even this idea that we were going to honor those people as everyday heroes, essential workers, and all of that. I think that brief moment has faded out, but we still have a world where there's a lot of people working. The big thing that's different is that now there's still a lot of fear mongering around the idea that all of our jobs are going to be taken by machines, but now the machines are not robots, they're artificial intelligences.
There's a lot of talk about AI in the mainstream. And so, what's new? What's not in the attention grabbing headlines that people should be thinking about?
I think that people should be thinking about much more about how these technologies are going to change jobs than the jobs they're going to get rid of. And I think that they're going to change jobs in ways that make a lot of jobs worse. And I think that sucks. And that's something we should be thinking about and we should be aware of. Even in the 2010s, when it was all about robots, the big thing that these companies were saying is, okay, well, there's all these Uber drivers now and their jobs are not very good, but we're going to have self-driving cars soon. So these jobs are going to go away. Don't look at the people doing the driving. Don't think about their rights. Don't think about their contracts, because by the time you organize yourself to make their work better, we're going to have self-driving cars. Okay, well, that didn't happen. What we were left with was a change in what it means to drive a taxi that made that work more uncertain, more risky for the people doing it. It's not actually the case that there aren't going to be graphic designers anymore, or translators, or proofreaders, or customer service workers. It's that these technologies are going to be used to tell people who do those jobs, hey, we don't need to hire you full time anymore. We just need you to come in and consult on the work that AI is doing. And the point of that will be to take a lot of people who've made, not necessarily a living wage, but at least more money doing those jobs, and finding ways to pay them less money. I'm not sure this is going to work in every case. I'm often skeptical of the ability of these technologies to actually fill in and do that main part of the work that people are doing. And there's a lot of really interesting anecdotal evidence of companies that like fire their workers, try to hire people to consult and fix the work that ChatGPT is doing. And then they find that they can't actually write a commercial that way, for example. And then they have to pay real consultants a large amount of money to fix this bad work that the machines are doing. So I think managers often treat their employees as if they were machines. So managers think, oh, I can replace this human machine with this computer machine. But the managers often underestimate how much sort of particular knowledge there is in all the work we do that's very hard for the machines to replicate.
I think something I'm maybe worried about is how widespread the technology is. I was just alerted that Gemini is now just in my email. And the hoops we have to jump through to get it out of our lives are greater than just going along with it. And so it's so widespread that it's basically the new normal.
Let's wait and see, because the thing about this stuff, if you think about previous industrial revolutions, think about like steam engines and railroads and steel and electricity. The thing about them is that there was something called economies of scale. The more you produced, the cheaper it was to produce each unit, right? That's a really fundamental principle of industrial or technological revolution. And the place we're seeing that happen right now is in green technology. Go look at solar panels. The price of solar panels has fallen by like 99%, because the more solar panels you produce, the cheaper it is. Most of what we do when we use AI is electricity use. And there's no savings on that at all. Every query you run, there was this big kind of jokey news story a few months ago about how people were saying thank you to ChatGPT when it did something for them. And it was costing OpenAI like millions of dollars because they had to process those queries. And so it's in all of our emails right now. It's like in everything we use because they want to find some way to make this useful. And it has to be so useful that it's worth it. These companies are just losing tons of money. And I'll be surprised unless they find some incredible productivity enhancing way to use this stuff. I just don't think it's going to be in your email for that long. It doesn't seem to be that much better than the very small level autocorrect or suggestions they had.
What are the class implications of AI broadly speaking, if that's on your mind?
Yeah. I mean, the class implications, I think we've been living through a long period where employers have found all these ways to pay their workers less money for the same jobs. More and more of the income that gets produced ends up as profits rather than wages. And that means it's shared by very few people rather than most people. For many reasons, the technologies we're seeing today are going to make that happen more. In some ways, what we've seen, especially with the platform economy, might become a more general feature of a lot of work without even necessarily meaning that people are working on platforms. It could just be people who were full time workers getting fired and then rehired as part time workers. From a class perspective, if you don't want to tear the whole system down, if you just want to say, okay, how can we make this a bit better? Then it's a lot like the 1920s and 30s when you had Fordism and you had all these skilled machinists making cars. And Ford introduces the assembly line and they're getting rid of as many skilled workers as they can and replacing them with semi skilled workers. In that case, it really did improve productivity. That's a big difference from today, I think. We haven't really seen the evidence that AI is actually going to increase productivity. But if it does, what the semi skilled workers had to do is they had to unionize to try to recoup some of that gains in productivity for themselves to say, hey, if you're making more money, we should also make more money. Given what's going on with all these jobs, and maybe because it's affecting white collar work, we are seeing an uptick in interest in unionization. We haven't actually seen a rise in the percentage of private workers who are unionized. But I would say that this growing excitement and just positivity around unions is a really important thing. If workers want to think about this from a class perspective and fight back, this is a really strong argument for unionization, for capturing some of those gains. Whether there will be gains, I still think open question, but they should be shared if there are.
One of the things these app-based platforms offer workers is this idea of autonomy. You can, as a rideshare driver with Uber, working with Grubhub, and now they're rolling out a house cleaning service. You can use the platform to get jobs. You're in control of your schedule. You're in control of which jobs you decide to take or not. In effect, you are your own boss.
I think the dream and desire for autonomy on the part of workers is really important and something really worth paying attention to. I think the thing that's so sad is just how much companies have figured out how to exploit that desire for autonomy to exploit people. Using algorithms to tell the drivers, oh, there's a fake surge in this area, go here. As Vina Dubal, this great researcher at University of California, talked a lot about, that really degrades the quality of this work. And I think you see this in all these spaces. Do what you love for work leads people to become graphic designers or get PhDs. Like there's all these jobs where employers have found ways to really exploit people's desire for autonomy and meaning in their work. And I think it's really disturbing. But I think it's really important to hold on to those desires because they point us towards what work could be.
Going back to the class component of this, the increase in inequality you talked about.
When we talk about how jobs are getting worse with AI, I think one thing that people are realistically quite concerned about is the idea that these tools, they're really good at performing at the middle level of performance. They're not very good at helping people who are really high performers in their jobs to perform better. They're really good at helping people who are sort of lower performing or slower workers to perform at the middle level. And that's why students use AI to cheat, because a lot of what we're doing in schools is we're trying to help people become competent at something.
So What does that mean for the future of work and the future of workers?
We could imagine a world where, and there's a lot of different ways people think about it, full employment, job guarantee, 4-day work week. There's all these ways to variously shrink the labor supply that kind of forces companies to invest in the workers that they're working with, rather than assuming that if they use people up and throw them out, they'll always have someone to replace them. I mean, unions are also great in general for kind of stopping that kind of thing from happening. But I think, yeah, it's going to be very important for the future. And we can decide to have something that gives workers more of a leg up to fight against those kinds of company strategies. As long as we live in an era with just a lot of pressure on companies to like make as much money as possible from shareholders and from private equity and so on, I think we're going to see companies take advantage of that to the major expense of people's lives.
You have a more, like, sort of see the ways the technology can be helpful or useful for workers angle?
I think something that I really don't like about the way we often talk about the future of work is when people ask the question, what does the future of work look like, or what's it going to look like? We hear a lot of answers from people like me who are professors. We hear a lot of answers from engineers. We hear a lot of answers from Silicon Valley. And there isn't as much interest in asking workers, not what they think the future of work will be, but what it should be. Like asking everyday people to try to imagine a world where work changed and work were better, and ask them, what do you think that world would look like? I think that it looks like security, feeling like you're going to be okay financially, but also that you're not going to worry about losing your job, and that you have a job where you actually feel like you contribute something meaningful to the world through your work, and ways for people to invest in their own skills and to feel like they're getting better at their jobs over time and to have chances to expand their responsibilities if they want to and so on. So I think it's very easy to imagine a world where people are not only secure and better paid, but also actually find the work they do, that the meaningful part of it, the part that draws them, keeps them coming back to it, that's not just, oh my God, if I don't get up and go to work, I'm not going to be able to pay my rent. I think we could imagine a world where technology improves that part of work. There's this late 19th, early 20th century anarchist prince, Peter Kropotkin, and he said something like over 125 years ago that really stuck with me. He's like, why is it that mines are so dangerous and scientific laboratories are so safe? It's because society invests in caring about the lives of scientists and doesn't care about the lives of miners. But there's no reason why we couldn't invest in making mines safe if we did care about those people's lives. And unionization has really forced a lot of technological change in mines in countries with unionized miners to make that work a little bit better. But I think we could really imagine a technological future where all jobs, from cleaning and cooking to scientific research and education, were actually made better. But we're not going to get there, unfortunately, in a capitalist economy, probably not. So we're going to have to really change things if we want to see that kind of world.
Professor of economics and founder of Democracy at Work, Richard Wolff, has long advocated for workers having equal voices in their workplaces, including when it comes to profit. Unlike many takes out there, he describes how workers could benefit in the age of AI.
AI could be and should be a rallying cry for the working class. Here's how I teach it. AI, let's assume there's an AI development that makes all the workers in an office or a store or a factory twice as productive as they were before. A software program, a machine, it doesn't matter. Okay, we know how capitalism is going to deal with this. The capitalist is going to rub his hands together and say, oh, great, I'm going to get this machine, I'm going to get this software, and I'm going to turn to half of my workers and I'm going to say, you're done. Don't come back Monday. This is your last paycheck. By firing half of them, the other half now produce just as much as the others. You don't need them, right? Your profit has mushroomed. And so, of course, you're going to do it because you're in it for the profit. So then I say to the students, now let's suppose that we had the situation of Argentina when the workers took over the factories. And let's suppose the same factory or office or store with the same doubling of output, technology change, AI. What would you do? You wouldn't fire anybody. What you would do is you would say to all the workers, you now work 4 hours a day, not 8. In the 4 hours, you will, with this new technology, be just as productive as before. We'll produce the same number of outputs as before, sell them at the same price, just as before, draw in the same revenue as just as before. And now what happens? So there's no change in profit, but the lives of the workers have been transformed. They've just gotten leisure. They've gotten time off. They can be with their lover, their parents, their children, all the rest of it. That's AI for the majority, the working class. That's a democratic AI.
The working class majority, which is about to get a lot bigger. Because AI isn't coming for your job exactly, but it is coming for the way jobs are created, valued, managed, and distributed. It really sounds like AI is less about it replacing you as much as changing the nature of work itself, and how much say we have in its frequency, quality, or pay, as more jobs turn into atomized tasks or brief bursts of time. And what defines class as much as having choices around things like your money, time, and employment? Is training AI the side hustle to your otherwise stable income, or the only way you're able to pay your rent, health insurance, or kids' daycare costs? The scale, scope, and speed of the technology makes it possible to fundamentally alter the labor market and employment, turning already precarious industries into on-demand stops and starts, depending on analytics and algorithms. Like the tap Josh mentioned, allowing companies to turn the flow of workers on and off, depending on their unpredictable needs. The gig economy model we talked about in episode 4 isn't only for rideshare drivers and delivery workers. AI has the capacity to gigify your job, regardless of your occupation, education, or income. People are turning to AI lawyers, doctors, financial planners, career counselors, and therapists for advice and support, increasing the possibility the human versions will experience the same roller coaster of scarcity in jobs and pay that define the gig economy. As you heard in this episode, a lot is uncertain, and even contradictory. But what seems clear is while there are forces capturing and dividing the working class, as we talked about this season, there is also the reality of solidarity and generosity. As Richard Wolff said, AI is a rallying cry for the working class. It can also be used as a turning point for increased class consciousness about the future of work for everyone. Whether it's more worker-led unions, a political party for the people, or a class-focused movement. Really, all of it. The numbers are on our side. Thank you for listening to Shifting Terrain this season. If you liked it, please tell all your people to listen to. Shifting Terrain was executive produced by Amanda Cowper and myself, Rachel Rybacek. Audio mixing by Tina Toby Mack. Thank you to our guests, Ava, Dzieza, Aaron Benanov, and Richard Wolff. You can find us on Instagram at Shifting Terrain Podcast. And of course, we'd love it if you'd rate, follow, and share the show.
Do you want to be a more empowered citizen, but don't know where to start? It's time to sharpen your civic vision and ignite the spark for a brighter future. I'm Mila Atmos, and on my weekly podcast, Future Hindsight, I bring you conversations to translate today's most urgent issues into clear, actionable ways to make impact. With so much at stake in our democracy, join us at futurehindsight.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.